There is a character in Sayonara Zetsubousensei who is the most mysterious. She appears in almost every plot, but the viewer knows very little about her. She is the heroine, Fuura Kafka. In the beginning, the author had Fuura Kafka marked as pen name. Just who is she? Every time she will appear without warning, and every time she appears, she will say something that seems positive, but in fact, it aims at the weakness of others and induces others to make the worst choice. Just like in the 11th episode of the first season, on the surface, she said for everyone to hibernate collectively so that everyone will welcome a better spring in the future. All the gaps in the windows are taped and charcoal is burned to keep warm. As a result, everyone got carbon monoxide poisoning, which almost became a group suicide. But the viewers at that time basically thought it was a funny exaggeration, just like Chidi's daily massacres. It wasn't until the real main storyline plot of chapter 290 of the manga that the bandage wrapped around the eyes of the DV girl, Kobushi Abiru, accidentally loosened, and all her classmates became Fuura Kafka in her eyes, even her reflection in the mirror. Kafka in the mirror is looking at herself with a motherly look. Then the story returns to its usual daily life. But the Itoshiki family began to become a little serious. The male classmates stopped coming to class. The school doctor mentioned that organ transplantation can cause personality changes. The most important thing is that Kafka seemed to disappear after that and never appeared, while the female classmates occasionally regarded other people as Kafka. In chapter 297 of the manga, Nozomu's elder brother, Itoshiki Enishi, finally appeared. His profession is marriage counseling, but this is a posthumous marriage for the dead, letting the dead get married to satisfy their desires during their lifetime, and so their soul can be at rest. He gave Nozomu the attendance register of that class, letting him complete the final stage. In chapter 298 of the manga, Nozomu announced a registration change and held a graduation ceremony for the last few remaining girls in the class. Nozomu began to call them one by one, but instead of their original names, he read their posthumous names. The name given to the dead in Japan symbolized that they officially changed the register from alive to dead. As each individual came to the stage to receive their diploma, the surrounding emperor penguins began to increase. These emperor penguins in their original daily life are like the mascots in the anime Penguin Drum, and they don't have much use in the plot. Somehow in this chapter, they started to shake their heads constantly at this graduation ceremony, and eventually they all turned into Tai Chi diagrams. After the graduation ceremony, each female student's seat in the class had worship items put on and sealed, while Nozomu went to his next post to continue his work as a teacher. This time, he was going to teach only 3.1 students in the class, and the name of the extra 0.1 student was Hiroshi, someone who had already died. Although he is dead, he is still alive in the hearts of 3 of his other friends. Nozomu said that they should help him graduate together, help his soul graduate from this world. After reading up to this point, most viewers will think that the girls in this class are dead, similar to what Itoshiki Majiru thinks, as he has been living with ghosts before. Like Angel Beats, Nozomu's job is to help them leave the world after experiencing the high school life that they didn't enjoy before when they were alive. Then, Nozomu told Majiru that he is now Hiroshi. After hearing this, Majiru thought he was also a ghost, but then saw the 11 girls that were still alive, and Nozomu then told Majiru that he was going to be Hiroshi's spirit proxy. At this moment, the 11 desperate girls began to explain the hidden truth. If we say that a posthumous marriage is to solve the regret of knowing that the deceased was not married before their death, then what they did was a posthumous graduation. They are all spirit proxies that belong to a certain deceased person to satisfy her regret of not graduating during her lifetime. Majiru asked why they would do this. The girls answered that these were inevitable things. From the moment they debuted, it was obvious that there were some problems with their personalities. Even the most ordinary Hitonami was a child who was very eager to be noticed by others. Once they lost their hope of being alive, they tried to commit suicide, but they were all rescued. What they are doing now is repaying the girl who rescued them. That girl's name is Akagi-an, who is also the Fuura Kafka that we know. Her father hanged himself several times after taking out a large insurance policy. Her mother was also not mentally sound by being part of a cult. Her uncle was in jail. Her brother graduated from university without a job and was depressed all day, and her heartbroken sister stayed at home all day. Living in that kind of family, Akagi-an had grown up healthy and had become a person who had a positive attitude towards everything. Now, the whole story started because of an accident. On that day, Akagi-an walked by Nozomu while crossing the road. She was hit by a car and died in order to retrieve the hat that was blown into Nozomu's hand by the wind, which gave Nozomu's heart some guilt. After Akagi's death, her organs were donated to those in need, that is, those young girls who committed suicide. The soul who wanted to live and the soul who wanted to die. These two souls that could not meet have met. This is what the Tai Chi diagram symbolizes. Yin and Yang, two completely opposite forces, meet each other and maintain stability. Negative, positive. Despair, hope. Refusing to go to school, refusing to leave school, wanting to live, and wanting to die. The positive personality in Akagi-an's organs influenced those who attempted suicide and led them to the class where they met despair. For them, that was their last hope. In terms of Tai Chi, this can also mean that there is Yang within Yin and Yin within Yang. If the inner part of despair is hope, then the real hope is despair. In order to lay to rest the ghost who wandered and died in the Showa era, the teacher and students stayed with her in the Showa era. Everything that is experienced in that classroom was fake. Fake period, fake students, fake classmates, and a fake teacher. The sole purpose of everyone staying in that classroom is to experience graduation as a spirit proxy. But before they knew it, they were no longer acting, but instead took that as their own life. If Akagi-an died before the first chapter of the manga, then who is Fuura Kafka who appeared in these 300 chapters? She is not as transparent as a ghost, and obviously has a body. Everyone can see her and make physical contact with her. For others, Kafka does not exist. But for the Itoshikis, the psychic family who can see and communicate with the dead, and those who have received Akagi-an's organ transplant, she is ubiquitous. The name Fuura Kafka comes from Akagi-an's favorite book, the author of The Metamorphosis, Franz Kafka. With the organ transplantation, part of Akagi's memory, as well as soul, entered the bodies of those desperate girls and became their second personality, which is called personality sharing. One day, she woke up and became terrorist organization member Kitsuchiri, and the next day, she became the serial stalker Tsunetsuki Matoi. This is why every time Kafka appears, there will be a strange feeling, because when she appears, one of those desperate girls will suddenly disappear. For others, the only way to tell Kafka from those desperate girls is her hairpin. For Itoshiki Nozomu, he had always believed that he was the cause of Akagi-an's death, so he volunteered to be the teacher of those girls. Normally, in order to have a deeper contact with the ghost, he kept committing suicide for a dying experience. He secretly trained his neck so that he could not die by hanging. Under the influence of Kafka, the emotions of the 11 girls began to love their Hope Nozomu. At the same time, Nozomu's feelings of guilt gradually turned into love for Kafka after getting along with those girls. The rest of the students in the class are insiders, acting as classmates of those desperate girls to make those girls live a more realistic campus life. Those male students existed as substitutes for when Itoshiki Nozomu gets into an accident. That is, they are the future Zetsubousensei. At the end of the manga, Akagi-an's organs have been integrated with the bodies of those desperate girls, and their second personality no longer appears. They have gradually lost the memory of the character of Kafka, and because the real name of the organ donor is kept secret, those girls will forget that that person is both their good friend and the mother who gave them a second life forever. The author designed a total of 4 endings for the manga, and readers can choose one of their favorites as the ending. In the first ending, the 11 desperate girls regarded Nozomu as their real teacher and expressed their gratitude towards Zetsubou-sensei. In the second ending, everything went back to the moment Kafka and Nozomu met and entered the sayonara Fuura Kafka ending. The third one I think fits the end of Zetsubou-sensei best. Those 11 girls put on wedding dresses and chased Nozomu, wanting to marry him. Nozomu started to run towards the church on the cliff. At this time, Tramere's song adapted by Kafka came from somewhere, and the desperate girls began to unconsciously sing it. Finally, when Nozomu arrived at the church, standing in front of him was Kafka, who had her hairpin off and a wedding dress on. Which Kafka are you? The story keeps an open ending like this. Through my personal analysis, there are 3 possibilities for this ending. The first is a happy ending. One of the 11 desperate girls is standing there. Nozomu is with her. The real Kafka is at rest. The second is the yaoi ending, which is the ending that sees the comedy style to the end. In addition to those desperate girls, there's another boy who has accepted Akagi's blood. He is the genius storyteller, Kuro Jun. He can also be Fuura Kafka. In the end, Nozomu could have seen Kuro in a wedding dress. But the most likely is the third ending, the Dazai Osamu ending. Nozomu couldn't forget Kafka. Finally, in order to see Kafka again, he jumped off the cliff and died in the name of love for her. No matter what kind of ending it is, they are all acceptable to the viewers. But the reason why Zetsubou-sensei had become a horror manga is not because of these funny or tragic plots. The real reason is its fourth ending, Manga Chapter 30X, the ending of despair. The previous endings are based on the fact that Kafka's soul has rested, and her organs have been absorbed by the desperate girls. But in fact, no one can prove whether a person's soul has left the world or not. The so-called posthumous graduation and marriage, to put it bluntly, is just an act to comfort those who are still alive. In the fourth ending, not only did Kafka not rest in peace, but her soul also absorbed the souls of the other desperate girls, and the transplanted organs changed the bodies of those desperate girls. In this chapter, a female reporter was asked to investigate a man. Someone heard that the man established a polygamy harem on the island. When the reporter interviewed the man claimed that he had only one wife, but other women could be seen everywhere in his mansion. For a more detailed investigation, the reporter visited the man again, but every time she came, the man's wife would change, but the man still insisted that he only had one wife. The reporter began to be puzzled about this, and then the man's sister explained to the reporter that her brother only loved one woman, and that woman is now divided into several parts and lives in all the women's bodies. Sometimes he likes her eyes, sometimes he likes her heart, and sometimes he likes her vocal cords. Repeating divorce and marriage in this way, this is true love for that man. The reporter who heard this felt terrified and desperately wanted to leave the island quickly, rowing away by herself in the inclement weather. However, the moment she left, she saw the truth about Entrel's island. Several women stood on the coast with their children. The strange thing is that their children all have the face of the same person, taking the same name as their father, Nozomu, which is also hope. The reporter's boat hit a rock while the children were singing, and she was seriously injured. Those women gave the reporter their blood and prepared to celebrate her wedding as the newly born Fuuda Kafka. This ending is used by the author to satirize those harem anime that are trending now, telling them what a real harem plus true love is. After reading these endings and looking back at the beginning, you can find that the author set the ending as early as the beginning and left countless clues in the anime, with the director as foreshadowing. In the first episode of the anime, Kafka's real name, Akage-an, was hinted several times. Translated into English, there were two interpretations, red-haired An or red apricot. When Nozomu saw such an imaginative Kafka at the beginning, he asked, is she supposed to be the Anne of Green Gables? It implies that Akage-an is Anne Shirley, and Fuuda Kafka is Franz Kafka. I said that every time Kafka appears, there will be a desperate girl missing. But because there are too many characters, it is difficult to notice which character has disappeared, unless you pay attention to it. At the end of Season 3, Nozomu said that many readers pay too much attention to small details, like characters that have become out of character, but they don't notice the bigger things, like a character suddenly disappearing. Applying this fact to the 5th episode of the first season, we can clearly see the sense of indisposition. In the last video, I said that there's an episode where Nozomu and those female students go to a hot spring that can detoxify them. To talk about some flaws, it is very important to shape the characters. After watching the ending and taking a look at this episode again, I found that this episode is spoilers for the viewers. There were 8 desperate girls, including Kafka, in the hot springs. Kafka suddenly disappeared after they finished bathing, but the number of female students was still 8. Until they ate junk food to replenish their toxins, Kafka suddenly appeared again, while the terrorist organization member Kitsuchiri disappeared, and Kafka pushed Nozomu into the hot spring. At the end of the episode, she appeared alongside Kafka. For those desperate girls, Kafka is the toxin within their bodies. At the same time, Komodo Kiri, who was living in the school, caught a cold in the bath, and then in the next story, Kafka went to the hospital because of a cold. In the anime Season 1, Episode 4, Kafka was wrapped in a bandage like the DB girl, Kobushi Abiru. On Kafka's phone screen in Season 3, Episode 7 is Franz Kafka, etc. Countless assassinations of Kafka's identity. So, when seeing the finale, it was beyond the imagination of most viewers, but it was logical. The 11th episode of the 2nd season of the anime hints at the ending of Chapter 30X of the manga. In Showa 83, a non-existent year, a Mr. Itoshiki with the same look as Nozomu made 12 desperate girls his mistress. But he does not love these 12 girls. He loves them as models. This is the same as Nozomu in Chapter 30X. He doesn't like his 11 wives. What he likes are the organs inside those girls that are Kafka's spirit proxy. At this point, there is still one last question left, and that is whether Akagi-an's true personality is hope or despair. To be precise, her personality at the beginning was like Tai Chi, as desperate as she was hopeful. She met some desperate girls when she was a child, and it was her that caused their personality defects. When becoming Kafka after death, she became completely in despair and tried several times to bring her classmates and teachers into her world. But getting along with other people gave her redemption, just like her confession to everyone at the end. She is no longer in despair. She is an angel who gives others hope. But because of this, she and Nozomu can never stay together. Everyone in the opening and ending songs is preparing to sleep for tomorrow. But Kafka is the only one staying in the station with no purpose under an umbrella. Nozomu held the apricot flower that fell on the ground, weeping and singing songs of martyrdom. Every time he runs desperately to save Kafka in his dreams. He also told himself several times that it was just a fake dream, while in real life, he had failed. Only by staying in this dream can he see the one he loves again.